In a voice soaked with irritation and sarcasm, my mother told me, "Taylor, you're overreacting." It felt as if she believed I was whining over something petty, yet this wasn't insignificant. This was every dollar I'd painstakingly saved over a decade, meant to give me a fresh start, and now it was in the possession of someone undeserving. I stood in the unfamiliar living room of a house I'd paid for, but somehow belonged to someone else. This someone was Ryan, 38 years old, not my brother, my mother's second husband's son, the supposed golden boy she idolized. He was a chronic failure, drifting from one job to another with no interest in building something for himself. Now, when I believed I finally had my own place, my mother handed it over to him, disregarding my existence entirely. My name is Taylor Parker. I'm 32, a nurse at a major Seattle hospital. I've spent my entire youth working relentlessly, day shifts, night shifts, ER shifts, countless nights devoid of sleep, watching patients battle to survive. I sacrificed vacations, postponed time with friends, sidelined personal hobbies, all for saving $150,000 for a down payment on a home of my own. But when my mother implored me to help her buy a new house due to foreclosure, I didn't falter. I thought aiding family was paramount, but I was mistaken. I remember the terms vividly. I'd cover the entire down payment. The house would be in my name, secured legally. That was my sole condition, my mother assured me, and I foolishly trusted she would honor this promise. Yet here, at what should have been my housewarming celebration, my mother casually announced, clutching transfer documents, that the house was now Ryan's. "Ryan requires a stable home for his family," she said, glancing at the guests mingling in the backyard. "You're young, robust, a nurse in a great hospital. You're about to be promoted and can buy another one." Anger coursed through me like a tidal wave. Buy another one? I toiled for a decade, sacrificing everything to amass that money. And Ryan? What had he done to aid Mom? Had he ever lost a single night's sleep earning his way? I faced Jack, my stepfather, silent the whole evening. Wouldn't even meet my gaze. "You agreed to this?" I queried, my voice taut and low. Jack shrugged lightly as if it was irrelevant to him. "He has a child on the way, Taylor. He needs a home more than you do." A hollow, cold laugh escaped me. "And I don't merit a home?" Silence answered me. Thoughts came crashing down. I scanned the room. The cream walls I'd chosen when touring the house, the chandelier I'd purchased because Mom insisted it made the place warmer, the sofa I'd meticulously ordered online. I'd imagined residing here, celebrating holidays, building anew. But here stood Ryan, smirking like a prize he'd gained without effort. "Come on, Taylor," he coaxed smirkingly. "Why such fuss? You don't need this place. You're an excellent nurse. You'll recoup that money in no time." He laughed as if my efforts were meaningless. I longed to scream, to smash the glass in my hand, to reclaim what was rightfully mine. They expected me to relent, to meekly accept this as I had other injustices, but they underestimated me. Tonight marked my stand. They'd soon learn. I locked eyes with my mother, pleading for an explanation, a reason, a hint of guilt, to transform this from a perceived ruthless betrayal. But she merely crossed her arms and shook her head as if dealing with a wayward child. "Stop being childish, Taylor," she scolded, her voice a blend of contempt and derision. "Ryan's necessity for the home was asserted again. He's expecting you hold a stable financial future and a promising career. Please try to understand, Taylor," she urged. I sneered. "So, what you're suggesting is I slave away again for 10 years, rebuild those savings, only to see them transferred to Ryan again?" Jack intervened, his words inflaming me further. "Let's not cause a scene, Taylor. We are family." Family. I clenched my fists, striving to contain the tempest within. My family had deceived me ruthlessly, stolen my hard-earned savings, cast me aside without a second thought. I glanced at Ryan, noting the infuriating smug on his face. The gleam of triumph was in his eyes. "Taylor, stop being obstinate," he shrugged. "Consider it a donation to those less fortunate." I clenched my jaws to refrain from shouting. "Ryan," I hissed, my voice trembling with anger. "Do you even comprehend the sacrifices I made to save that sum? 10 years, a decade of forgoing every vacation, every holiday, every serene night of sleep. And what did you do? Bouncing from one terrible business venture to another, then running back to exploit my mother's resources. Ryan raised an eyebrow, nonchalant, as if I was exaggerating. Don't act holier than thou, he snickered. You're merely a nurse, not a renowned surgeon. It's not like you saved the world. Just work a couple more years, you'll regain it. Something snapped within me. My mother didn't contest his assertion. Jack didn't either. No one in this supposed family sided with me. I turned towards my mother, locking eyes with her. How long have you been planning this? Her eyes averted, but that flicker of hesitation revealed everything. From the start, right? I insisted, my tone ice cold. You never planned to keep your promise. You merely needed me to fund this house so you could discreetly hand it over to Ryan, didn't you? Her blinking hastened, as if seeking a way to refute it. Taylor, you're overthinking things. I released a dry, cynical laugh. Overthinking? I shook my head. Look into my eyes and tell me you were oblivious to this scheme all along. Silence. A sharp ache pierced through my chest. I always knew my mother favored Ryan, that she loved him more than me, but I never imagined she'd rob me of my future and unhesitatingly gift it to him. You always assured me that I was your daughter, I whispered, but today I realized something. My mother scowled. Realized what? I met her gaze, feeling the weight of my heartache crush against my ribs. I was never truly your daughter. She opened her mouth to argue, but I afforded no opportunity. I turned and walked out of the house I once aspired to call my own, leaving behind the betrayers I once called family. I drove in silence, gripping the steering wheel so firmly that my knuckles blanched. Rage made my chest ache, but more than that, an intense, gnawing pain invaded my thoughts. They deceived me. The ones I trusted pilfered from me without hesitation. When I arrived at my apartment, I collapsed onto the couch, my mind blank. What now? The money was gone, the house not mine anymore. 10 years of savings erased and deposited into Ryan's account. The shrill rings of my phone jolted me back to reality. It was Rachel. I picked up, my voice hoarse. I'm not in the mood for a chat, Taylor. I'm aware you're devastated, but you can't just let it go. Rachel's voice was frantic. I don't want to hear you utter it's too late, or they are my family, or any other excuse. I chuckled bitterly. Family? Do you genuinely believe they regard me as family? No, and that's precisely why you need to reclaim what's yours, Rachel insisted firmly. They took that house from you, but you can restore it to your possession. I shook my head, although she couldn't see it. How? The paperwork is already signed. I'm uncertain. Rachel failed her voice, but an associate of my family's lawyer once mentioned a property cannot be transferred unlawfully without the original owner's consent. If you didn't sign transfer papers, this could count as fraud. I blinked, my heart pounding faster. Rachel continued. My brother knows a real estate lawyer, Marcus Hayes. You need to consult him. I hesitated. Involving the law meant my parents could face legal repercussions. Despite my fury, I'd never envisioned taking legal steps against them. Rachel perceived my reluctance and snapped. Are you worried about them facing the consequences? What about you, Taylor? Did they care for you? Did they consider your emotions when they betrayed you? Her words struck like a slap. They didn't care. If they had, they wouldn't have done something so callous. I inhaled deeply, clenching my phone tighter. All right, I'll meet Marcus. The following morning, I walked into Marcus Hayes' office. He was a sharp-looking man in his 40s with an astute gaze and a no-nonsense demeanor. He sifted through the documents I submitted, scanning each page with intense focus. I sat opposite him, my stomach a knot of apprehension. Do you see anything irregular? Marcus paused, extracting a letter from the stack. His expression turned grim. Were you aware of this notice? I squinted at it. It was a legal notification sent to my mother and stepfather a fortnight ago. The message was explicit. Transferring the house ownership devoid of my consent could constitute contract fraud. Legally, I remained the proprietor. A frigid chill coursed through my spine. They knew, I murmured. They knew it was unlawful, yet they proceeded regardless. Marcus nodded. If they executed a transfer without your authorization, this constitutes fraud. And the tense atmosphere of Marcus's office. My eyes were fixed upon the bundle of documents sitting before me. He highlighted a crucial line in the transfer contract. This signature isn't yours, he commented firmly, twisting my stomach with anxiety. I didn't need his verification. I had never authorized any papers to assign my home, yet there lay a legal contract bearing a signature eerily similar to mine. Marcus pointed to another page. Furthermore, the prior legal notification demonstrates that your mother and Jack were aware of the illegality, he emphasized, yet they proceeded with the act. He paused, looking directly at me. Taylor, this transcends real estate fraud. There's a possibility they've fabricated your signature, and if confirmed, it constitutes a grave felony. Swallowing hard, I queried, what are our options? Marcus reclined in his chair, decisive in demeanor. Initially, we file a court petition to restrict any modifications to the property, prohibiting Ryan from selling, leveraging, or altering the house. Subsequently, we initiate a lawsuit to nullify the transfer and restore your ownership. I inhaled deeply. Proceed. Marcus responded without delay, commencing his work immediately at his computer. Walking out of his office, I recognized a newfound resolve. I had waged war against my family, unwilling to relinquish my home without resistance. Just a day following the documentation submission, a flood of calls from my mother, Jack, and undoubtedly Ryan bombarded my phone. Choosing silence, I let them go to voicemail. My mother's voice permeated every message, oscillating between fury and desperation. Taylor, you can't undermine your family like this. Withdraw the lawsuit now. Do you want to see your mother imprisoned? You're ripping us apart. Ryan needs the house, consider your nephew. Following were Ryan's indignant taunts. You think victory is certain? Your so-called brilliant attorney can't save you. Ultimately, you're just a selfish little girl. I erased each message, without hesitation. Shortly thereafter, Marcus sent an email confirming the injunction was approved. Ryan was barred from the house until the case resolved. For the first time in possibly weeks, I felt a renewed sense of control return to my life. That evening, as I arrived at my apartment, an ominous knock resounded through the door, signaling trouble. Opening it, I found my mother there, her eyes puffy and swollen, with Ryan glaring ominously behind her. Before I could react, my mother rushed inside. Taylor, I beg you, don't go through with this. She reached out imploringly. Our family is worth more than this. I withdrew. You label theft as family? Ryan barged in resentfully. You believe you're so intelligent? You think an unexceptional lawyer can help you overcome me? I stood unshaken. Ryan, there's nothing to ponder. I'll prevail because I financially invested in that house. My mother broke down in uncontrollable sobs. Do you truly want to take legal action against us? I met her eyes. My response as chilling as ice. This was your own doing. Ryan growled, stepping closer, but I cut him off with a raised hand, warning, don't act recklessly, or this will escalate beyond a mere lawsuit. Ryan halted, his eyes burning with fury, yet refrained from further movement. I watched my mother collapse into tears, but felt indifferent this time. Leave my home, I insisted, each word deliberate and unwavering. She gasped, Taylor, you'll regret this. Resolute in my stance, no, for the first time ever, I hold no regrets. I shut the door firmly, excluding them from both my residence and my life. Their play was concluding, and now it was my turn. 3 weeks after the lawsuit was submitted, a significant transformation occurred, blindsiding my mother, Jack, and Ryan. True to his word, Marcus ensured justice was served. With irrefutable evidence, the fraudulent contract, absent of my genuine authorization, the ignored legal advisory from their attorney, and worst, the counterfeit of my signature, compelled a quick judgment. The contract was annulled, my house was reinstated in my name, and they were mandated to compensate $50,000, covering legal expenses and emotional distress inflicted upon me. Upon receiving this news from their lawyer, I could almost envision the pallor of my mother's face. The final signing occurred at Marcus's law office, where the atmosphere was freezing as I entered. Jack was hunched over the table, avoiding eye contact, and my mother quietly wiped tears away. But this time, all I felt was disgust. Ryan, sitting across from me, appeared as a man who had lost everything. As I slowly took my seat and opened the file, Marcus directed us to the last line of the agreement. "Everyone needs to sign here," he said. "The property will go back to Taylor. And here is the acknowledgement of the fraud." My mother's weak voice broke the silence. "Do we really have to do this, Taylor?" I responded with a steely determination. "Yes. I want the truth documented. I don't want anyone claiming I stole the house from Ryan later." Jack sighed and signed, his hands shaking. Ryan's jaw clenched painfully with rage as he looked at me with hatred. He threw the pen onto the table. "You'll regret this," he spat. I smiled, feeling victorious. "No, Ryan, I won't regret anything." With fury emanating from him, Ryan angrily scribbled his signature on the agreement. My mother was the last to sign, her eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "Do you really want to cut me off like this?" I said nothing, gathering my documents and leaving them to the consequences of their actions. A week later, I learned of Ryan's downfall. His wife, Jessica, filed for divorce after discovering loans he took out in her name, leaving her with enormous debts all traced back to Ryan. Jessica voiced her bitterness over the phone. I was a fool to trust him. I wasn't surprised. Ryan had never taken responsibility for anything. Within a month, after losing the house, the divorce, and drowning in debt, Ryan moved back in with my mother and Jack. From mutual acquaintances, I heard their lives were chaotic, money dwindled, living in a cramped rental apartment, and they struggled to survive, just as they once tried to manipulate me. This wasn't revenge, it was justice. A week after the legal proceedings wrapped up, I returned to a house now truly mine. No more fake laughter from Ryan, no more Jack's condescending stares, no more manipulative words from my mother. Just me and a home that was rightfully mine. I sighed in relief, having won and reclaimed myself. The house, once central to a brutal legal fight and my dreams, now felt like nothing but an asset, no longer secure, only a symbol of betrayal. Knowing I had to move forward, I reached out to a real estate agent the next morning. Within 3 weeks, I received an offer above market value, which I accepted immediately. Signing the sales contract, I felt unburdened. No more ties to the house or a bitter past. The proceeds, along with a $50,000 settlement from my family, allowed me to chase my real dream, a small home with a private garden, a fresh start, free from manipulation. 2 months later, I settled into a cozy little house on the city's outskirts, charming with its wide porch and lush garden. For the first time in years, I felt true happiness as I walked over the warm wooden floors and gazed into the sunlit yard. No shadows of my mother, no cruel words from Ryan, and no need to prove my worth to undeserving people. I was completely free. However, my family's attempts to reach me persisted. A few weeks post-sale, my mother called incessantly. Initially, her messages seemed concerned, with casual questions about my life. But when I didn't respond, her tone shifted. "Taylor, do you really want to cut me off? I'm still your mother, no matter what. Family isn't something you can discard so easily. Ryan is struggling, can you help him a little? You have more than enough money." I chose not to reply. Jack, too, sent a lengthy email about family and forgiveness, which I read once before deleting. I had learned my lesson. It was crucial to uphold boundaries. With my family no longer draining my energy, I focused intensely on my career. As a result, I quickly climbed the ranks and became head of nursing at the hospital. Marcus had been right. Once you set a boundary, you don't let anyone breach it. He mentioned it wasn't about just reclaiming my home. It was about reclaiming who I am. I once was the person who took up holiday shifts to let my colleagues enjoy time with their families, the one who stayed late to help whenever needed. But now, I have learned the power of saying no, putting my needs ahead. I was no longer the girl, always prioritizing others over herself. Not everyone abandoned me. Rachel stood by my side. She assisted in repainting my living room, planting roses in my backyard, and every weekend, we cherished our time together, savoring a glass of wine on my balcony. I still can't believe you actually accomplished it, Rachel expressed one Friday evening, her eyes gleaming with pride. Gazing out at the garden where flowers began to blossom, I replied with a smile, I have never felt this free in my entire life. Raising her glass, Rachel toasted, here's to Taylor Parker's newfound freedom. Clinking my glass against hers, I felt serene. No more obligations, no emotional debts, or unwanted burdens that never should have been mine to bear. Just my life, my future, and everything now belonged entirely to me. A year later, and my life transformed beyond my wildest dreams. Gone were the endless calls from my mother, the lingering resentment over misappropriated money, or the pressure to prove myself to those who never truly cared. My little house became my sanctuary, with flowers I planted flourishing in my backyard and rows of tomatoes and greens thriving under the morning sun. Each morning, I sipped my coffee on the balcony, feeling the breeze touch my skin, feeling lighter than ever, free from pain and burdens. I once believed I was trapped in my family's manipulative cycle, always the one being exploited, but now I've built a life I genuinely love. My career also soared. I was promoted to head of nursing, offering not only a better salary but a genuine voice in the workplace. I was no longer stuck with every night shift or saddled with extra responsibilities simply because I had no family to rush back home to. I learned to set boundaries in both my professional and personal life, which made me stronger than I've ever been. I should have anticipated my mother's persistence. One autumn afternoon, after watering my backyard vegetable garden, the doorbell rang. Opening the door, there she was, the same eyes, purposely weary demeanor. Yet I was no longer the girl I used to be. My mother inhaled deeply, her voice frail. "Taylor, can I come in?" I didn't step aside. "What do you want?" She hesitated, avoiding my gaze. "I know I crossed the line before. I shouldn't have done that to you. But now Jack and I are struggling, and Ryan too. We're family, Taylor. You can't simply abandon them." I regarded her for a moment, with only clarity, no anger, no pain. "Family?" I raised an eyebrow. "Family means respect and appreciation, not just showing up when you need money." She faltered, as if taken aback by my bluntness. "Are you really going to turn your back on me?" Her voice cracked. I met her eyes, my voice firm. "You turned your back on me first, remember?" With no reply left, I gave her a brief nod and closed the door, this time free from guilt. I owed them nothing now. That evening, Rachel visited with a wine bottle, as usual. We sat on the balcony, admiring the sunset splashing hues of orange and gold across the sky. Rachel mentioned, "I saw your mom's car earlier," glancing at me. I shrugged, sipping my wine. "She came asking for money." I declined. Rachel chuckled, pride twinkling in her eyes. "I remember when you would have emptied your savings for them. You've changed so much, Taylor." I smiled, embracing the deep peace within me. "No, I haven't changed," I said, setting my glass down. "I've just finally learned to value myself more." Rachel raised her glass and toasted. "Here's to the new Taylor." The soft chime of our glasses echoed through the garden, as I took in the tranquility of owning my life without regrets. Taylor's journey is more than reclaiming a house. It's about reclaiming herself. It underscores the reality that family isn't always a sanctuary, and the closest people can exploit us the most. Through betrayal, challenge, and triumph, Taylor discovered that true freedom arises from setting boundaries and valuing oneself. Nobody's obliged to sacrifice endlessly for those who don't appreciate them. Living well is the best revenge. What are your thoughts on Taylor's story? Have you ever experienced manipulation by family, like she has? Share your insights in the comments below. Don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful real-life stories centered around family, justice, and freedom.